Let me go ahead and pray, and we'll start. So let's pray. Father, thank you for this class. Thank you for giving us the time, the resources to tackle this beautiful language. I pray for any butterflies that are there, that they would go away, and that this would be just a time where friends get together and learn together. I pray you help us. I pray you help me as a teacher, as an encourager, and I pray in all of it that you'll be glorified. And I pray all this in Christ's name. Amen. So, let me get where I can look at all this. So you guys are seeing the study guide, chapter 1 is up now. So this is a document. I've taught Hebrew a few years now, and I know that one of the challenges for a lot of people are expensive textbooks, so I tried to do something that would be free. So this is a resource, a summary of many different textbooks, and it will be our chapter guide. We'll get a new one of these every week. I'll try to send out a kind of short video, YouTube video, and I'll send you all the links. When we come together as a class, we'll go through this and we'll learn this together. So, you may watch the preparing video just kind of, to get yourself, looking in the right directions. Then we'll go over it as a class. By Saturday, maybe let's say 12 o'clock on Saturday, if you can have both these quizzes done and just print them out and write them with a pen. And if you take a picture on your phone, send me the picture and I can grade it that way. If you ever have any question about anything or confused, if you email me, I will get right back to you. And I think my email is this, judd.davis@bryan.edu. So, questions, or don't hesitate. If you don't follow anything, stop me at any time. But basically what we want to do is by the third week we want to be able to read.
Dr. Davis?
Yes.
I think a student is trying to get in.
Oh, thank you.
Another student.
Thank you very much. Dion, sorry I didn't see that you were trying to get in there. Thank you. So what we'll do is by the third week, what we want to be able to do is voice any of the words out loud. We're going to take these first few weeks, and all we're trying to do is learn how to look at the written word and say it out loud. So that's the ultimate goal. We're going to look at lots of different things on the way. If you don't get it all, that's okay. Learning an ancient language is, it's a long run. It's not a sprint. So it's not how fast you do it first. It's just keep going. The great thing is that Hebrew is a very simple language. I was blessed to study under a guy who had done his doctoral work at Yale. And he said to my class all those years ago, he said you can write the entirety of Hebrew grammar on the front of one notebook page and half the back. That is, you can take one sheet of notebook paper and write on it everything you need to know in terms of Hebrew grammar. That is a really simple language. That's the good news. The bad news is only 3 words from Hebrew come into English, so we're going to have to kind of memorize a lot of vocabulary words, but that's not going to be hard, and we're going to do it together. Once we get started, we're going to do about 15 a week, and by the time we finish the whole class, we'll know the top 500 words. And whenever you're studying a foreign language, when you know the top 500 words, you can understand 80% of the language. 80% of the language is usually the top 500 words. So that's what we're doing in the whole year. It's not going to be complicated grammatically. The strangest thing we have to deal with is this really unusual alphabet. And what we're going to do, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and we're just going to learn them. And if you talk to 10 different people about how you pronounce Hebrew, you're going to get about 5 different opinions on exactly how it should sound. It's a little like if you ask someone, what is the pure American accent? Is it Atlanta? Is it Birmingham? Is it New York? Is it Brooklyn? Is it Chicago? All of those are kind of different sounds, and so what we're going to do is we're going to go with the modern pronunciation. And the reason we're going to do that is because there's all kinds of MP3 files that we can listen to people reading the language. And so whenever you're learning an ancient language, as long as you're consistent in the way that you pronounce it, then, as long as you're hearing the same thing every time, you're going to be in good shape. And since there's so much that's been done with modern Hebrew speakers, that's what we're going to follow. But know that, what we are learning is going to be slightly different than what some people say is the ancient pronunciation. And the reason we're doing it this way is because they don't have MP3 of the ancient pronunciation and they do of the modern. So we're just going to go with the one where the resources. Any questions about that
Dr. Davis, Christina said she's in the waiting room.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. She just got there.
Thank you for that. I'm going to figure out how to turn this on where we don't have the waiting room anymore. So it looks like we're all here. Welcome, Christina. Sorry I didn't see that you were trying to get in, so thank you for emailing. That's good. So the tricky thing about any ancient language is when you pick the pronunciation variant that you're going to follow, there's some weird things about it. And there's some really weird things about modern Hebrew pronunciation. Let's go over the 22 letters and then I'll explain. So these letters are Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. So I want you to be able to learn the alphabet in order. And the rule is whatever the name is, that's the sound it makes. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. So the Aleph is really a silent letter, or it's just that very small letter that you make when you say like honor or something. It's just a very slight glottal stop. The name Aleph is actually a word. It means the ox. It probably goes back to when these were pictograms. And so Aleph is the first letter. Turns out in Hebrew, the alphabet is also the number system. So whenever you're looking at these letters for Hebrew people, they're also numbers. In fact, before the age of computers, if you got a Hebrew concordance, often the numbers would be written in the alphabet. And so I don't know how many times I've stood there and said, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, where I'm counting on my fingers to try to figure out what number it is. But those are the ones, they're the first five, they're straightforward. The A, the silent letter, the B, the G, the D, and the regular H sound. Then the next ones are Vav, Zayin, Het, Het. So that's a guttural H sound. So you're saying H, but it's very heavy and it's very back in your throat. Het. A lot of people will transliterate that CH, but it's a hard H sound. Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, which is a T sound, but it's a staccato T, where it's just really that sound. Het, Tet, Yod. So let's say all of this. Say it with me, the first 10 together. Let's say it together as a class. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod. Who can say the first 10 without looking? Just say it. Who wants to try to say it? Amanda, I see the smile on your face. Would you like to try?
I can try. Okay. Am I allowed to look at the paper?
If you need to, you can.
Okay. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet,
Right.
Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin.
Good.
Het,
right?
Tet, Yod.
Yod, that's perfect. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod. We're almost halfway there. That's 10. We've got 10 out of the 22, so we're in good shape. Who else wants to try first 10? Good, Avery. Did I say that as a volunteer hand, or was that?
Sure, we'll call it a volunteer hand.
Okay.
Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod.
Perfect. All right, who else wants to try? Christina, I see a smile on your face. Would you like to try?
Well, I think it's not fair because I don't know if you know, I took Aramaic this summer.
Oh, well, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, so I don't think that's very fair. But as Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod.
Perfect. Who else wants to try? Antonio, I see a smile on your face. Would you like to try?
Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Het, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod.
Perfect. So, of those 10, there are 2 letters that are easily confused, a Hey and a Het, right? They're both a H sound. The Hey doesn't go all the way up. The Het does go all the way up. So, other than that, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod. When we get to the next group, these are kind of in English order. At least that's how I remember them. Kop, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik. Kop, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik. So the Kop has what's called a final form as well. If it appears at the end of the word, it looks like a dalet, only it has a really long tail. So whenever kaf is in the middle of the word, it looks like this, but when it's at the end of the word, it looks like this. So when you get to the end of the word, you have to look and see, does the tail go below the line? If it goes below the line, it's a final kaf. If it doesn't go below the line, it's a dalet. Lamed mem, and so this is a final mem, so slightly different form if it's the last letter. Noon, and if it's the last letter, the tail goes below the line. And then Samik. So Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kop, Lamed, Mem, Noon, Samik. So that's 15. Anybody want to try the 15 without looking? Scott, would you like to try? I saw a smile there.
No, that's cowardice coming through. I can do it by reading though.
Okay.
But Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik.
Perfect. Then I do these three together. And I don't know why I do them together. They kind of rhyme to me. But ayin, pei, tzadi. And this ayin, people call aleph a glottal stop. And ayin is a more intense glottal stop. Most of the time when you learn Hebrew, they'll just say, don't even try to pronounce it differently. And I mean, that's what I was taught. And the problem is when you try to spell Hebrew words, if you don't make a difference, you're going to be all messed up. So I did have a professor years later teach me that the sound the ayin will make is this sound, ah. You're taking the back of your throat and you're squeezing it and then letting that go. And when it makes a sound, that's what an ayin is. So an aleph is just almost a silent letter, the glottal stop. The ayin is a hard glottal stop. Ayin, ayin. So you're squeezing the back of your throat, right where your throat goes down. You're trying to squeeze that, and the sound it makes when you let that go, that's going to be ayin, ayin, ayin. So ayin, pei, just a piece sound, tzadi. So aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, vav, zayin, het, tet, yod, kop, lamed, mem, nun, samik. Ayin, pei, tzadi. And then the final four are easy. Kof, resh, and then the 21st letter actually has two pronunciations. And it depends on where you put the dot. And so my first Hebrew professor was a really funny guy, and he would tell us jokes and stuff. And he was a little bit liberal, but he had a joke. He said, sin is always on the left. And so if you're wondering, well, how do I do it? Is the left or the right? His joke was, sin is always on the left. I don't know what he meant by that, but that's an easy way to remember. So if the dot is on the left of the letter, it's sin. If the dot is on the right of the letter, it's shin. So sin, shin. And you're going to ask me, well, what's the difference between a samik and a sin? And we have no idea. For native speakers in the ancient world, there was a difference, but for us, it's just the S sound. And so that's going to make it a little hard when we spell words, because we aren't able to distinguish that. But we can't distinguish letters in English. I mean, what's the difference between city and sin in terms of the sound? But those are two different letters. So we have the same thing in Hebrew with the sin and the samic. At least I do, and my teachers. There's no way to voice that difference. And then the last letter is Tav. So Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kop, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Pei, Sadi, Kof, Reis, Sin, Shin, but really it's just one letter, Tav. So that gives you the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Now, that's pretty straightforward. The problem comes with what's called the Begad Kafat letters. And Begad Kafat is just a made-up word, so you can remember these letters, but it's Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kof, Pei, and Tav. And as near as I can tell, in antiquity, the Begad Kafat letters had two different pronunciations. One with an H and one without an H. What the dot in the letter does is take the H out. So, in antiquity, you would have a Tav, and if it had the dot, it's the T. In antiquity, if it didn't have the dot, it was the TH. In antiquity, Pei, if it had the dot, it didn't have the H. If it didn't have the dot, it had the H, so it was PH. In antiquity, doesn't have the dot, it would have the H, so you'll hear some people pronounce the word Adam, and you'll hear people say Adam, and they're adding that H sound because when you spell Adam, it doesn't have the dot, and so you get that sound. The problem is in modern times, modern Hebrew speakers only recognize 3 of these letters as having an H sound. So the Beit, the Kaf, and the Pei, native speakers will differentiate. The others, they don't differentiate between ones with the dot and ones without the dot. Since we're following the modern pronunciation, and that's what the MP3s, we're kind of forced to accept that as well. But you will hear people who are trying to imitate the ancient way, and with all the Begad Kafats, if it doesn't have the dot, it has the H sound, so it would be a BH or a V, I guess we would approximate it. If it does have the dot, and the dot's called a Dagesh, the Dagesh takes the H sound out of that Begad Kafat letter. So questions about that. So that's why you have B or V. The Gimel is just G. The Dalet is just D. The Kop, if it has the dot, it's the K sound. If it doesn't have the dot, it's the CH sound. Right? So in the Begad Kafat letter, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kof, Pei, Tav, if it has the dot, it takes that H sound out of the letter. You with me? So that's a little bit tricky. That takes a little getting used to, but we're going to hear enough people read this well that we're going to pick up that that's what's happening. So there's some really helpful websites, and the question, the website that I want us to go to is this one at the University of Washington. And if you click the link, this is a helpful website, this is what it will take you to. And if you click on the word,
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
So let me move myself out a little bit. So what you have with that is
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
So we got some weird stuff going on in that sentence. Do you see how there's some blue dots in that sentence?
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
So the blue dots are what's called pointing. Moses had never seen anything like those dots. No ancient writer had ever seen anything like those dots. Those dots were added much later because Hebrew has no written vowels. It's a consonantal language, and you have to supply your own vowels. And sometime, maybe about 400 AD, Hebrew speakers were afraid that we would lose the right way to pronounce words. And so they came up with different systems to tell us which vowels to supply, and that's called pointing. And so everything in blue is pointing, and it's kind of like training wheels. So if you move to Israel and you learn Hebrew, you can buy a newspaper that has pointing that will tell you what vowels to say. But once you learn the language, you're not going to buy a newspaper like that anymore. You're going to buy a consonantal one that will just have the 22 letters. And so you kind of supply those vowels as you go based on your familiarity with the language. Do you see the things that are in green? So I'm going to play it again.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
Okay, the things that are in green are accents. They're called cantillation marks. People in Israel who read the text kind of sing the text to each other. And so those marks are all related to the cantillation of the text. We don't have to learn those other than that wherever they are, those are the accented syllables. So the marks in green, you don't pronounce anything, but it does show you the syllable that's being accented. And when we go to divide the words in syllables, that's going to be important to us to know which syllable is accented. But what all that means is when we're learning Hebrew, once we learn the alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Sadi, Kof, Re, Sin, Shin, Tav. Once we learn that, we're also going to have to learn this kind of vowel shorthand. And there are a lot of rules with this vowel shorthand, and we're not going to try to memorize them. We're simply going to copy the native speaker. So when we go to the text, we go to the Washington website text. What we're doing is we're trying to mimic exactly what he says. So see if you can say it with me as he says it. So I'll play it. See how much you can follow along.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
Who wants to try to read that? Or maybe you have just kind of memorized it, but who would like to try doing that?
I can give it a go.
Okay, good.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
Good. Haaretz.
Haaretz.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim. Did you hear how he said that letter twice? The reason he said it twice is because whenever you have a dot in a begad kafat, it takes the H out. But in a non-begad kafat letter, the dot doubles the letter. So this syllable is hashamayim. So that dot, dagesh line and dagesh forte, a doubling dagesh or a begad kafat dagesh. So kind of new thing. Va'et haaretz. So Avery, you did a fantastic job. Who else would give a go at reading this in Hebrew? We're trying to mimic exactly what he is doing. Who'll give a shot?
Dr. Davis, I have a question.
Yes.
Just to make sure that I'm understanding, the final forms of the letters maintain the same sound. It's just for the written purposes that they have a final form. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So in this text, the only final form is the sadi. So normally the sadi would have that curled around tail, but when it appears at the end of the word, it goes below the line, and so that's a final. And then these two mems are final mems. That's why they look like the little square, but they're pronounced exactly the same. So You guys have time for a little biblical theology? So, I've been studying and teaching biblical languages, studying Greek for 39 years and Hebrew for 36 years, and I've taught Greek so many times I can't count, in many Hebrew classes. But I tell people that I teach biblical languages as an excuse to teach biblical theology, because the thing that I love in life is just looking at biblical theology and seeing the beauty of the connections between the Old Testament and the New. And I just want to point out something. There's probably one of those 7 words that you already know. So we've read this sentence a number of times, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz. There's probably one of those words that you've heard before. What word is it?
Elohim.
Elohim. It's the word for God. And if we do a limit search, it appears hundreds of times in the text. It says here 2,600 times the word Elohim appears. And I know we're just starting Hebrew together, but I'll bet you know more Hebrew than you think you know. And I want to try to prove it to you. Okay, what do you call those special angels that keep sinners out of the Garden of Eden? What do you call one of those angels? It's on top of the Ark of the Covenant. It's embroidered on the veil. What is the name of that special angel?
Cherubim.
And one is called a cherub, right? And whatever a bunch of them called. Cherubim.
Cherubim.
Right? And you know,
Elohim.
those burning creatures flying around in God's presence in Isaiah 6, one is called a seraph. What are a bunch of them called?
Seraphim.
Seraphim.
Seraphim. And in the 10 Commandments, which the 10 Commandments appears in Exodus 20, 23, you will have no other gods. And can you see that's exactly our word? In fact, if you want to make any noun a plural noun in Hebrew, if you add im on the end of it, it will convert the singular noun to a plural noun. So remember my funny Hebrew teacher? He had a saying. He said Hebrew is the only language where he means she, where who is he, and he is she, and me is who, and dog is fish. Who is he, and he is she, and me is who, and dog is fish. And all that's true. Like, you say that word and that's what it means. So if you're talking about one fish, it's a dog. How would you say a bunch of fish?
Dogine.
Dogine. And in fact, we could go through 10,000 words in the Hebrew language and I give you the word, and you could convert it to the plural by adding "im" to the end. So you're going to have like this fantastic question of me about Genesis 1, Bereshit bara Elohim. And what's the question that you're going to have?
If that's plural.
Is it plural? And it is plural. It's the plural of the word Eloah. And Moses, Deuteronomy 32:17, sorry, it's not 32:17. It's, it's right here. This is the singular of the word God, Eloah. And you can see that it has "im" on the end. So you're going to have another great question. What's your next great question? It's probably going to be 3 letters in English. Starts with a W.
Why?
Why? Well, you can't translate Elohim here because the word create is singular. Bara can only mean he creates. So when you get to the second word in the Bible, monotheism is established. So there's an entity who's describing himself as a he, who's only one, but then when it gives a name to that entity, it describes him as a plural, Elohim. In the beginning, he, that is Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. Now let me ask you this. Do you know any other passage in the Bible that introduces a plurality within the more basic unity of God in creation? Do you know any passage in
Let
the
us
Bible?
make man in our image.
Yeah, let us make man in our image. That's one. I was thinking maybe in the
Baptism.
sorry. I was thinking in terms of maybe in John.
Baptism.
Baptism has plurality there. I was thinking of John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. John's bringing us to this passage, and he's saying, you know that thing the rabbis could never explain to us? Why God can be plural and singular at the same time? Well, there it is. 3 words into the Bible, it's happening. You have a he who then is described as a plural thing or a plural entity. And that feature happens thousands of times in the Hebrew text. Sometimes you'll hear people say, well, it's not that important. I don't know. I think it is important. Trying to find the verse here. When God brought me forth from my father's house, in Hebrew, the verb brought me forth. Can you see the parsing there? Verb third person plural. Elohim is plural enough word that at least on one occasion Abraham uses plural verbs with it. This is a feature that's in every page of the Hebrew Bible, because the God of the Bible is presenting himself as a he, they. The God of the Bible is presenting himself as an I, we. And it's not till the New Testament that we start getting a glimpse on that plurality within the more basic unity of God. And I don't even think it's right to say more basic unity of God. I think the text is saying that God equally, eternally, absolutely is a plurality who equally, eternally, absolutely is also a unity. And 3 words into the Hebrew Bible, you're having to wrestle with that. So, I don't know. Questions or comments, or I hope that's not confusing to you, but just comments or observations.
Is there any pattern where God is referred to as a singular, or is it always plural?
Well,
Because I looked at the passage, the Deuteronomy passage, and that's referring to like idolatrous gods, which I understand where that could be singular.
well, I mean, Israel was committed to monotheism, and so you'll have a thing like the Shema. Here, let me get it where we can see it good. You will love Yahweh. That's God's sacred name, YHWH, or you will love the Lord your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your muchness, is what it says. I guess this is the verse I wanted. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our Elohim, the Lord is one entity, echad. Do you know that Jews won't say this word out loud? Do you know that? Do you know what word they say instead? Adonai. Do you know what the word Adonai means? It literally means my lords, plural. So 3 times a day, every Jewish person who's following the Torah will say, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And literally that says in Hebrew, or the spoken is, my lords, our gods, my lords is one. That's what the spoken Shema literally said. And so God, B.B. Warfield said the Old Testament is like a lavishly furnished room dimly lit. And he says, is Elohim the Trinity? And Warfield says, well, if you mean Trinity as a word, Tertullian coined the term Trinity, when Tertullian lived much after the New Testament. But if you're talking about a view of God where God is one, and at the same time more than one, he says absolutely that's in the first text. And then you get hints of it with Yahweh and the two angels who appear to Abraham in Genesis 18, and then it starts in 19, it starts calling one of those angels Yahweh. And then it has the verse, so Yahweh rained down fire from Yahweh in heaven. And you go to a Jewish person and say, what's that about? And they say, well, that's easy. It's the little Yahweh. The little Yahweh is on earth, and he rained down fire from the big Yahweh in heaven. They even had a name for the little Yahweh, Metatron. And they would come to those texts and say, why is it the angel in the bush, and yet the angel speaks as God? And they say it's God on earth, God in his immanence. Even Philo, the rough contemporary of Jesus, would see plurality in the figures on the ark and talk about one of the angels as God in his creative glory, and the other is God in his ruling glory, and then somehow the transcendence of God is between those two. And so you have Jewish people who are wrestling with these texts where you have plurality and unity, but they're all believing that this is true. God is one. God is echad. He is one entity, but there's some kind of unexplained plurality within that unity. And that's on every single page of the Hebrew Bible. The YHWH 6,000 times, the Elohim 2,600 times, 8,000 times in the Hebrew Bible you have this tension between plurality and the unity of God, and it's just jumping out on the page. Then when we have the full revelation with Jesus, that's who God is, that God is Father, God is Son, God is Holy Spirit, and they aren't parts of God. They all possess everything that makes God God, and yet they're distinctions. The Father is not the Son is not the Spirit is not the other two, and you see it in beauty. 3 words into the Hebrew Bible, you have this grammatical thing that is very difficult to explain unless you're having some kind of view that allows for plurality within the more basic unity, or the unity of God. What else? Observations or...
I imagine there's not, just because I know I've always read we don't actually know the vowels that were in Yahweh. But since pointing was developed, has there ever been a written record of pointing to what those vowels may have been?
So the early scribes didn't know what to do with the tetragrammaton, the 4 sacred letters, and so they did all kinds of things. Some manuscripts, they write the word in different color ink. Some manuscripts leave out any letters. What our text does is takes the vowels, the pointing from the word Adonai, and puts it over YHWH. And that's how some people come up with the word Jehovah. That's what they're doing. They're taking the letters from Adonai and putting it on YHWH, and then giving it kind of the German Je instead of Ye. But scribes did all kinds of things. There are some manuscripts where they write the Tetragrammaton in Paleo Hebrew. Most of it's written in square script that we're learning, but when it comes to God's name, they'll put it in Paleo Hebrew. Some Greek manuscripts write the word Pippi, and you say, where did they get Pippi from? And it's because they couldn't read Hebrew, and so they were trying to do YHWH backwards, and the closest they could get was a pi, and so you actually have that. They just were trying to mimic the way the letters looked, but we don't really know, other than to say that the Tetragrammaton is somehow related to the verb to be. And if it's related to the verb to be, then you would point at something like Yahweh, even though we can't be sure that that's exactly the way it is. And a Jewish person won't say that ever.
Is that still true today?
It's so true
Is that still something that Jews practice today?
They won't say it. And in fact, some Jews won't even write the word God today. They'll do G-D, where they're not even wanting to say the word God out loud.
I think even Messianic Jews too, right? Won't say it.
I'm less familiar, but that would not surprise me if that were the case.
Dr. Davis, I have a question about the Elohim thing. I'm very novice, but why don't we see the same phenomenon in Aramaic? Because I think there it's still Elah, Eloha. It doesn't use the plural there. Do you have any theories on that?
Well, I wonder if, the possible confusion with polytheism was so great that they came up with a way to avoid it. I don't know. All I know is that Moses knew how to spell the word Eloah, and he uses it in Deuteronomy 32:17. And that's not the only text where they do things like this, where, when you have an adjective, if you talk about the living God, do you put the adjective in the plural or the singular? And you have single verses where they do both. They'll put some adjectives in the singular and some in the plural. But, this is a case where side by side, you have the singular and the plural. But it does invite us into the text, doesn't it? It's like, okay, is Elohim a true plural or not? Well, you've got dozens of texts where, it talks about false gods, and it's always Elohim, or other gods, Elohim, Acharim, and it's, no one contests that those are true plurals. You just can't translate it as a plural in our passages because the verbs are always singular, except that one that we saw with Abraham. So it's really an interesting phenomenon that, we don't even see it in English because there's no way to put that in the text for us, but it's everywhere in the Hebrew Bible. You want to do one more cool biblical theology thing before we we could spend the rest of our lives just going through beautiful things, and I would be old and senile, before we got through looking at all of them. But I want to do one here. So it says, and the earth was tohu vabohu, without form and void. And if you said, well, what does that mean? Well, the Greek translators thought it was unseen and unprepared. And the earth was unseen and unprepared. I'm not sure what that would mean, but that's how they take it. Does this phrase appear anywhere else in the Bible? Tohu vabohu. Turns out it does. So if we search for the phrase, it would search through everything for us, and it would pull up a passage in Jeremiah. So what should we do?
Go to Jeremiah.
should we read it? Since this is the first night, maybe we should read it in English, do you think? I looked on the earth, and behold, it was tohu vabohu. And to the heavens, and they had no light. Well, what's this talking about? My anguish, in pain, oh, the walls of my heart. My heart is beating wildly, I cannot keep silent. Crash follows upon crash, the whole land is laid waste. Suddenly the tents are laid waste, my curtains in a moment. How long must I see the standard and hear the trumpet? For my people are foolish, they know me not. They are stupid children, they have no understanding, they are not wise. They are wise in doing evil, but how to do good they do not know. I looked to the earth, and behold, it was tohu vabohu. What is this talking about in Jeremiah? What has happened that there's anguish here?
Is this after the temple has been destroyed?
This is God's judgment.
Yeah.
What do you find interesting about that? In fact, if we go back and we look at the individual words, show me everywhere tohu appears. It appears lots of places. I found him in the desert, in the wilderness. Do not turn aside after empty things. Caravans turn aside from their course. They go up to the waste. All these are bad descriptions, right? And if we did the same thing with bohu, show me everywhere that appears, it appears less, but all these are bad as well. The plumb line of emptiness. Why would God create the world in its initial state look like this unformed state? This howling waste, and then start bringing order into it, and light and life and his rule.
Is it anticipating recreation from the get-go?
It's almost like he knew. I mean, could it be that he's building into creation a foreshadowing of the story of redemption? Do you have time for one more? Okay, this word, the deep, tehom. Anybody had Greek? Do you know what this word means? Here, I'll put the translation of the Septuagint. It's this word, the abyss. Now, I'm trying to persuade you of something in this class, and what I'm trying to persuade you of is that the effort that we put in learning Hebrew is like worth it. Hebrew is going to pay us back over and over again. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but you are as close to the Hebrew text as some people will ever get. And I want to show you something. And I hope it makes you really mad. Okay? So I'm going to do a lemma search on this word, abyss. Because I want to know where that word appears in the New Testament. So this is what we know about the abyss. The demons are terrified of the abyss because they beg Jesus not to send them to the abyss. This is the story of the Gadarene demoniac. How is abyss translated in Romans? It's translated bottomless pit. And that's what the word abyss means, the bottomless place. But the moment you translate it bottomless place, what have you done for the English reader? You've just made it impossible for the English reader to connect this with this. And you've made it absolutely impossible for the English reader to connect with this. When God comes to original creation, he violently splits the abyss in two, and the result is dry land appears. If you were an Israelite, is there an event that would come to your mind? Ryan, what would that event be? Violent splitting of deadly waters and dry land appearing.
Yeah, the Exodus.
The Exodus, right? God making salvific space. God making... And do you see that when God has Moses split the Red Sea, that he's having Moses kind of do this God thing that God had done at creation, where he comes to the abyss and he makes salvific space? For me, when I became a Christian at 18, I had so many questions about, is the Bible true? I was at a state university where all the professors just constantly said the Bible isn't true. But the more I read Greek and Hebrew, the more I saw this beauty in the text, this connection in the text, this Christocentric meta-narrative that I just couldn't explain unless there was a God who knew the end from the beginning, and a God who put the details of the story of Jesus in that text over and over and over again. And for me, that beauty has become so compelling that I can't stop studying Greek and Hebrew. I sneak the books on vacation. I read in the text when I know people won't think it's weird, because it's just so beautiful, and it has solved so many of the problems that used to trip me up massively about the Bible. And that's what Hebrew will do for us. Now, we're going to have to memorize some words. We're going to have to memorize some paradigms, but it will absolutely pay us back. I've never regretted 1 second I've spent studying the biblical languages, and so I want to try to persuade you of that. So at the end of the year, you can tell me if I've been successful or not, but I'm trying to make that case that this is actually worth your time to study, because it's going to give you some answers that really can trip you up if you don't have access to that. So, what do we need to do in terms of what we need to do for this week? Okay, we're taking these 2 quizzes, which basically is write out the alphabet. And then the second part of the quiz is not that you get all of this right, but that you start to be able to pronounce some of this. So if you can, by the end of this week, if you can get Bereshit bara Elohim, then you have succeeded wildly. If you can get Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim, you've done great. If you can do a little more than that, it's all going to be fine. But that's what we want to get for this week, is the ability to write out the alphabet and to say some of these words together. Do you think we can do that? Can we do that by Saturday? So now we're kind of just in, extra fun stuff. So we're going to learn more about these vowels, and I've put several different schemes on there. Read through all 3 of them. Maybe one of them will strike you. You don't have to know all 3, but basically it's 3 different ways of looking at the pointing and how you say it. Don't worry about this. I'm just going to delete that because it's complicated and we don't really need it. And you guys are helping me put this together, so if something doesn't make sense to you, you tell me and I'll get rid of it for when I teach it next time. But we're going to learn our first 4 Hebrew words. And in the Hebrew Bible, there are 309,000, almost 310,000 words in the Hebrew Bible. We can memorize almost 40,000 of those words if we'll memorize that "ve" means "and." So you tell me, how important would it be to memorize this list? What percentage would that be? Is that like 10% of the Hebrew Bible? You can go tell your family, that guy is such a slave driver. He made me memorize 10% of the Hebrew Bible. First night, we had to come in there and I had to write down 10% of the Hebrew Bible vocabulary. Can you believe that? Now, you don't have to tell them it's one word and it means "and," but it's the truth. 37,000 times that word appears in the text. It's over 10% of all the words that appear. "Ve." It goes on the front of the word. We've already had it a couple of times. So what is this word right here? It's the word "and." What is this word right here? It's the word "and." What is this word right here? It's the word "and." So if we learn "ve," and we know that we can put it on the front of the word, we've learned 10% of the words that appear in the Hebrew Bible. Sounds to me that's pretty important to learn. The next word we want to memorize is the word "the." And so it's right here. Usually you have a double dagesh, but you can't double a guttural, so you lengthen the vowel. So this is the word the land. So, and the land. And the spirit of Elohim, let's see if I can find another one. Oh, the heavens. That's a ha shamayim, the heavens. The light. So if we learn that word, we've learned 25,000 words. This is the preposition to, 15,000 times. It goes on the front of a word. Let's see if I can find one here. To the light. God called to the light day. God named the light day. And the darkness he called night. So la means to. And be, 11,000 times, is actually the first word in the Bible. In Reshit, in the beginning. So if you learn these 4 words, that's 37, 23, 40, 60, 74, 85,000 words you've just learned in the Hebrew Bible if you'll learn these 4 words. So how important is it to learn these 4 words? It's massively important to learn these 4 words. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the list and learn the top 500. And the more we learn, the easier it is, it'll be to read. So, questions about that or comments? Avery.
Is there a hierarchy to how these words are stacked on the beginning of the word, or is it actual word order?
So, in English, grammar is determined by word order, usually. It's not really in Hebrew. You typically put a verb first, you put the subject second. If something's a direct object and it has the word the, you put this at there, and it tells you, but that's kind of all there is to the grammar. There isn't any kind of fancy thing beyond that. Just basically that the verbs go first and the subjects follow. And then if it's a definite direct object, it'll have this et there.
So like it, because what I'm thinking is like in, maybe being way too extra, but I'm just curious. Like in Greek, there's like the postpositives, like hade being but the, or and the.
We don't have anything like that in Hebrew.
Okay, so if it's like let's see, vebe, then it would be and the at the beginning of the word.
Right.
Okay.
So let's spend a little time looking at how to use logos. And I'm going to show you how I set my logos up to read. I understand that you have access to logos in a pretty massive library in logos. I didn't know a way to check to see if you have all these tools, but I wanted to show you the ones that I use. So if you open up Logos and you blank everything out, I have so many things running on my computer. I think it's thinking about crashing I've got a gazillion things. Okay, so if you open up Logos and you hit this button, it clears everything. So let's start with a clean slate. And if you type in BHS, what that stands for is this resource, Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, the Hebrew Bible published in Stuttgart, Germany. So whenever you see BHS in a commentary, this is what they're referring to. And this is the standard edition of the printed Hebrew Bible, BHS, Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. That's the text you want to read from. Okay, are you able to access that on your copy of Logos? I wondered if that would be the case. So what we have to do is we have to find a Hebrew Bible. So if you type in Hebrew Bible, you're probably going to get a thing called the Lexham Hebrew Bible. I think that's the one they put in a lot of places. Yeah, the Lexham English, interlinear, probably this one, the Lexham Hebrew Bible. Do you have access to that? So Lexham and BHS are exactly the same Bible. They have exactly the same words. This BHS has the critical apparatus with it. So anytime there's a difference, a textual variant, but the Lexham is going to be your same printed. So you've got the same printed words there. And I'm just going to turn off my notes because they kind of. So the great thing about these texts in Logos is if you click on it, it will look the word up in a lexicon. Now, the standard lexicon in Hebrew is called Halot, the Hebrew Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. So anytime you see in a commentary, Halot says so-and-so, what they're referring to is this 4 or 5 volume Hebrew text. This is the standard Hebrew text of the Old Testament. So in Lexham, if you click over the word, double click it, it's going to look it up in your Hebrew lexicon. Now, I imagine you probably don't have Halot because it's very expensive. But do you have a lexicon in Logos? When you click on it, does it open up a dictionary?
I have, and this, I actually bought a package of Logos a number of years back, so mine may be different, but I have a concise Hebrew Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. Is that the same thing?
That's
or
the
is that
same
different?
thing. So that's by a man named Halliday, and that's called C. Halot, or some people call it Holiday. It's a much cheaper lexicon, but it's the same entries, only abridged. So the Halot is the standard. So if you have the concise Halot, which, let me see if I can pull it up on mine. Concise Hebrew William L. Holiday, a concise Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon. Do you all have that in your package?
So what I gotta do?
I don't have.
What about Brown Driver Briggs? Brown Driver Briggs. So all you need is one of these. Do you have that one? Anyone have that one? Okay, so what you do is you do Brown Driver Briggs, and the way I do mine, or the way I have done it, is you go to your lexicon, whichever lexicon you want to use, and you want to do the send hyperlinks here. Do you see that? When you do that, you've got a little target up there. So when you do that, when you click on the word, it's going to take you right to the entry. So you double click on the word. So whichever is the best lexicon you have in your package, that's the one you want to say send hyperlinks here, and that way when you click on it, it's going to look up the word for you. Does that make sense to you? Everybody on the same page?
I don't see any of these texts.
Let's try New American Standard Dictionary. Yeah, I'm sure you have this one. New American Standard Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek Dictionaries. Robert Thomas, do you have that one? And of course, when you get there, if you just double click on it, it will.
You said New American what?
The New American Standard Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek Dictionaries. All you need is one of the dictionaries, and then you hyperlink it by saying send the hyperlinks here. Now, the way I have mine set up, is I have, as you have money to purchase these, this is probably what you want to end up getting. If God gives you the money to get it. BHS, that's your standard edition. You probably want to get Halot, or at least the concise Halot. But this resource is the cat's meow. It's called an Analytical Key to the Old Testament. And it's by a man, John Owens. Not the John Owen Puritan, but a modern guy. This is as close to Zerwick as you can get for the Hebrew Bible. If you're familiar with studying Greek, there's a tool called Zerwick's Grammatical Analysis, and it's like just solid gold if you want to read Greek. This Analytical Key is as close you can get to that for Hebrew. The paper version of this cost about $200, and the electronic version of it cost about $200. And I have used this resource so much. I have the electronic version and the paper version. Like I've spent twice as much as anybody should ever spend, because this is a great tool, because it's going to parse every word in the Hebrew text. So it tells you you've got a preposition plus a noun feminine singular. It's going to give you any kind of grammatical discussion of it. So Gesenia's couch is a standard Hebrew grammar, and then it's going to give you a gloss in English of what the phrase means. If you call this link set A and you call this link set A, that means as you read, it will automatically load the verse for you. So I've read through the Hebrew Bible many, many times. I'm not sure I would have been able to make it through without ACOT there, the Analytical Key of the Old Testament. So they call that ACOT. But if you get it, and it is expensive, so, I don't know there in Birmingham or where you all are, but in Chattanooga there's a used bookstore called McKay's, and I've seen some volumes of ACOT at McKay's before for $10. So if you keep an eye out, you may be able to get at least part of this set for not very much, but I use it all the time. Whenever I read anything, I've got ACOT there. I've used it every day for many, 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 many years. And so if if your goal is to get to the place where you can volume read, ACOT is probably what you're going to ultimately want. For this class, I'm going to give you ACOT for most of the stuff that we read, so you don't have to have it for this class. When I give you the study guide, I'm going to copy that part of ACOT and give it to you. But when you get out on your own and you want to read a passage on your own, you're probably going to want to buy this resource. I found it tremendously helpful. And the reason you want it is because it's hyperlinked to grammars. It'll take you exactly to the place where they discuss difficult points, and for some reason it's going to the German version. I have the English version, and I just need to hyperlink it, but you can see, and it's going to take you to the dictionary articles as well. You can see that this tool will be solid gold in terms of reading. So are there some questions or observations on any of this before we go on?
Tell me how you do the hyperlink one more time.
Yeah, so once you get your Hebrew opened, and so
I found it.
Lexham Hebrew.
I actually got the BHS.
Oh, you had BHS.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like $100, so that's cool. Once you get BHS, whatever you're going to have as your dictionary,
Mm-hmm.
you see these three little dots in the corner right there?
Right.
If you left click that, that's going to be how you make the font bigger or smaller. And so however big your eyes can handle. But then if you go down, the third one down, it says send hyperlinks here.
Okay.
And when you do that, you see this little red target. That lets you know any hyperlink from this text is going to go to this resource first. And so if you double click that, it went here and it took you to to exactly the entry in the lexicon.
Okay, and what dictionary do you recommend us using?
So it depends on which one you've got. The one that's like the standard scholastic one is that Curler Baumgartner Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. They call it Halot, Halot. It's like a 4 or 5 volume set, and Logos has the electronic version. It's very usable. An easier one is the concise Halot. So if you, and that was abridged by a man named Holiday. Like at the used bookstore here in Chattanooga, you can find Holiday for $10 sometimes. People will get, and it's very nice binding, and it's simply the abridged version of Curler Baumgartner, which would be like $150 or $200 if you bought the set new. I think you'll probably have Holiday, and Holiday is spelled Holladay. Halliday, I guess you would say it. And that's the concise Halot. Anybody find that in the package, in their package?
Dr. Davis, did you say the one that you recommended the most was by Collar, Baumgartner, and Richardson?
Yes, that's like the standard, standard, and they'll call that Curler Baumgartner or KB sometimes. You'll see it, but
yeah, my lexicon it has it listed just HAL.
Oh, HAL. Okay.
Yeah, mnemonics for it. Because I have a DBL Hebrew, CHAL, BDB, HAL, and I think that's the one you were talking about, HAL.
Yeah, the Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, that's the other standard work, and if you have that, that's like a 10 volume. That's a very expensive thing. If you
Who's the author of that one?
Klein's, Klines, David Klein's. That actually was published at Sheffield, where I did my work. My friend actually worked on it, wrote some of the articles. And do you all know that when you're in the text, if you right-click the word and you come down here, it will pull up this Bible word study. So I right-click the word, and then I went to it's not pulling it up on the video, but I got to biblical word study, and then when I did that, it will pull up you can see that. I'm going to do this where it's just one thing where we can see it. I'm taxing my computer to the limit. It's I can feel that it's creating a picket line and it's about to go on strike. But it will pull up all the resources. So this is the standard one, Hebrew Aramaic lexicon. If you do the more, it will show you all the lexica that you have. And I think this is I think I've got my computer frozen up. I can't move this back just yet. But if you do that, you can do all the searches. And what I had hoped to do, let me just go to my friend BibleWorks, so we not waste everybody's time with my frozen up computer. If we did a word study on this bara, did a lemma search, show me everywhere that word appears. The most interesting one to me, and this is talk about something that's really practical. If you go to Psalm 51:12, create in me a clean heart, O Elohim, a pure heart. Create for me, O Elohim. Do you know what this passage is? Psalm 51? It's when David had committed adultery with Bathsheba and killed Uriah, the Hittite. And he's saying, God, if I'm going to be a person with a pure heart, you're going to have to bara it for me. Just like you bara'd the universe into creation, you're going to have to bara a pure heart for me, because I don't have a pure heart. I'm never going to be able to walk in your ways if you don't create this pure heart for me. And what's interesting about that is when you look at the Greek, pure heart, that appears in the New Testament. Do you know what passage it appears in the New Testament? Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, the pure in heart will see God. Well, how do you get a pure heart? You come to God and you ask Him to create a pure heart for you. And oh my goodness, I can feel my computer is about to just go up in a puff of smoke. I've got way too many things open, but I just want to show you this if I can. I'm going to ask the Lord, please let my computer not blow up. Yeah, 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart. So David asked God to create a pure heart for him, and Jesus says people who are pure in heart are blessed. Well, how do you get a pure heart? God's going to give it to you. So the point of all this is to say that biblical theology is a great thing, and that the biblical languages are like a great tool. So we've got to memorize a weird alphabet, and we've got to memorize some dots and some vocabulary words, but what it's going to pay us back with is the ability to make connections between the Old Testament and New in a way that's going to bring Jesus great honor, and be very practical in terms of its application to our lives. So that's what I believe to the core of my being, and I hope that I can pass some of that on to you. But as we close, are there any questions or observations?
I don't know about anybody else, but this seems like it's gonna be pretty tough.
It's.
I'm-
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm hoping it's easier than Greek at least.
So, I've taught Greek a lot of years, and Hebrew is way easier than Greek, in my opinion. You don't have nearly the charts to memorize. The grammar is really simple, and we have a year. It's not like we have to memorize all of it at once. We have a whole year, and we're going to be reading in Genesis in just a few weeks. I mean, we're going to be reading actual passages, so it's not nearly as hard as Greek, in my opinion.
Dr. Davis, this is kind of a begin with the end in mind sort of question. At what point should we approach the text and feel comfortable? Because I've had 6 hours of Greek now, which has kind of been just enough to where I pick up an NA28 and I'm frustrated because I know 80% of the words, and I'm just hitting this wall. And
Yeah.
whether it's Greek or Hebrew, what's kind of the timeline, and how do we push through these various plateaus?
Yeah. For me, I was a classical Greek major at UGA, and I read a lot of Greek, but I didn't read it comfortably until I got Zerwick, and I started trying to read 2 pages a day. And I got to where in 6 months with Zerwick, I could read 2 pages. Well, they're only 780 pages, and you read 2 a day, and in 2 years, you're going to read through the whole thing. Well, what happened is every time you read through the text, the next time you read through it is going to be half as hard. So I did 2 pages for a while, and then I got to where I could do 5 pages in 30 minutes, and then I got to where I could do 10 pages in 30 minutes. And once you're doing 10 pages, you're reading through the New Testament every 78 days. And like after 3 or 4 years of that, I could sit down and read through Romans, not only have to look up, 20 words or something. So it took me about 5 years of reading 30 minutes a day to where I got comfortable enough to read the Greek as my Bible. But remember, I did that 30 years ago, and there weren't computers. It's not going to take you guys 5 years, because I would spend 50 minutes looking up a word in a dictionary and actually reading 5 minutes. You can take your 30 minutes and you're going to read lots more than I ever did. I would think probably two years of 30 minutes a day would get you in Greek, where you reach for the Greek first. Hebrew took me a little longer, and I think I was doing it wrong. I don't know why it's an easier language, but it took me a while to get to where I could volume read. But if you do it 30 minutes a day, you'll get to the place where you can read anything in prose in Hebrew without a dictionary. I remember one week I was reading a paper at SBL or at ETS, and I read through the Pentateuch in Hebrew in a week. You'll get, if you just keep at it, you'll get to the place where you can volume read in Hebrew. And if you ever get to the place where you can volume read, you will start discovering these hidden treasures in the text that are glorious. That are beyond glorious. And if that ever happens, you'll never go back. You'll have the ESV Study Bible on the shelf, and you'll have BHS, and you'll find that you reach for BHS before you reach for the ESV Study Bible. And the things that will happen when you get to that place are just beyond spectacular. So I encourage you to keep at it. I've been there. I've been frustrated just like you are right now, but there are good things beyond if you just do it every day. Anything else? Observations or questions?
You said you gonna put like a workbook on in Dropbox or something. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I sent you the email link, or Antonio, I may not have sent it to you. I put
I hadn't got it.
a link to my Dropbox folder, and it has all the materials that we'll use in this class. So I'll make sure that I send the link out to everyone again. But if you click on that link and then you save it as a favorite on your browser, you'll have access to the folder that has all the quizzes, all the study guides, all the helps, and you can access it through there. I will send you each week the chapter study guide. It'll be the same one that's in the folder, but I'll send you the actual link so you won't have any problem finding it. And if you have any problem at all, I hope I'm a nice guy. Let me know. We can do a Zoom link. I can walk you through things one-on-one, because there isn't anything in life hardly that I enjoy more than helping people learn how to read the biblical languages. And so I'm here. I'm want to help you absolutely succeed in this class. And so we'll go through together and we'll make it. So be encouraged. So in terms of like what I want you to do, if you get to the study guide, print these two quizzes out, quiz 1A and 1B, and just take them until you can do well on them. And whenever you do well, send me that copy, and that's what I'll count as your grade. I don't mind you looking at the test before you take it, because this won't be the kind of class you can cram for. It's more a long-term memory. So print those out, get to where you can do what those two quizzes ask, and you'll be in great shape.
I have just a real practical question, and I may be jumping the gun here, but just out of curiosity, like what is the best way to learn how to handwrite this alphabet? Because it's just so foreign to me. I can't.
Yeah.
It looks so calligraphic that I can't imagine handwriting it. So what does that look like? Where do we learn that?
So the rule that you want to follow is try to make your handwriting look like the printed text as closely as you can. But realize that when this was written, it was written by a left-handed person. all ancient languages were written by left-handed people. It's designed to be written by a left-handed person. And so if you're right-handed, you're going to have a little trouble writing it, just the way left-handed people have a little trouble writing English, because you're kind of going against the flow. But what you do is you just try to mimic the printed text as close as you can. And it's not going to be that close at first, but you're going to get better at it. And there are some worksheets you can go on the internet and just type in, worksheet to write the Hebrew letters, and it'll show you the arrows, where to start and where to end. And some people find that helpful, but try to mimic that printed text as near as you can. You'll be in good shape.
Okay.
All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thanks.
One more
Recording
thing, Doc.
stopped.
One more.
Dr. Davis.